Welcome to the Digital Abuse and Safety Planning Training Through a Woman's Place. By the end of this presentation, we hope that you will have gained a greater awareness of digital abuse and how it is experienced by both adults and teens, and also a better understanding of principles of advocacy and how you could support survivors of digital abuse in your role with A Woman's Place. The table of contents states that we will begin with an overview of abuse and then an overview of digital abuse specifically. We will discuss adult digital abuse, how digital abuse manifests in adult relationships through a role-play experience called A Walk in Her Digital Footprint. We will then debrief that role-play and move into learning about adolescent digital abuse. We will then watch a video about adolescent digital abuse and review that video. Lastly, we will finish with principles of advocacy and digital safety planning. Let's begin with an overview of abuse, what it is, what it isn't, and how it might interact with or overlap with other types of relational violence. Intimate partner violence, or IPV, is usually violence that occurs in romantic relationships. This includes domestic violence, adolescent relationship abuse, and intimate partner violence later in life. Relational violence occurs in non-romantic relationships. This can be peer-to-peer, this can be adolescent to adult, this can be in different social groups or contexts. Examples include bullying or oppression. However, it's also non-romantic domestic violence. For instance, adolescents could experience relational violence or non-romantic domestic violence from parents, cousins, siblings, grandparents, aunts, or uncles. Lastly, we have criminal behavior. This is any illegal interaction. Criminal behavior can be present in romantic relationships and non-romantic relationships. These could include assault, destruction of property, stalking, criminal trespassing, child abuse, sex crimes, kidnapping, and the like. It's important to understand that abuse can happen without the presence of criminal behavior. To continue with our overview of abuse, let's discuss how abuse is defined and categorized. Abuse is considered a pattern of behavior used to control another individual by reducing their personal and relational power. Notice that abuse must include a pattern of behavior and an element of power and control. Here you will see our power and control wheel. These are tactics that abusers use to gain that power and control over the other partner in abusive relationships. As you can see, tactics can include using intimidation, using emotional abuse, using isolation, minimizing, denying, or blaming, using children as a manipulative tactic, using social privilege, social status, or standing, using economic control, and finally, through coercion and threats. Abuse can be layered, involving many different tactics of power and control. Meaning the pattern of behavior doesn't need to be the same exact behavior over and over and over again. It can be a layering or a pattern of different tactics that are being used to gain power and control in the relationship. Similarly, a survivor can experience different types of abuse in the same relationship. Different types of abuse that can be experienced include physical abuse, verbal abuse, psychological abuse, financial abuse, sexual abuse, and finally, digital abuse. This presentation will focus strictly on digital abuse. So what exactly is digital abuse? To begin the overview of digital abuse, let's start with the definition of digital harassment. Digital harassment refers to a range of harmful interpersonal behaviors experienced via the internet, as well as via cell phone and other electronic communication devices. It's important to note that it's not just the content, but also how devices are being used. So therefore, digital abuse is a pattern of these harmful interpersonal behaviors that is used to gain power and control over the other partner in the relationship. Technology amplifies abuse, and it also increases the reach and is used to overwhelm the survivor. Digital tactics can be used for all of the other types of abuse. For instance, an abuser can use digital tactics to abuse sexually, verbally, physically, psychologically, and financially. Therefore, technology amplifies abuse, and it also increases reach. Because technology is such a part of our daily lives, digital abuse then can permeate and penetrate many different components of our daily lives. And therefore, it's sometimes harder for survivors to escape that abuse. To continue our overview of digital abuse, let's look at tactics of cyber violence that abusers may use. We can organize these tactics into four main categories. The first is impersonation. So abusers might create fake profiles or impersonate other people to get close to the survivor. They might use hacking, spoofing, and also voice alterations. Spoofing is a fraudulent or malicious practice in which communication is sent from an unknown source and is disguised so that the receiver doesn't know where that source is from. It can apply to emails, phone calls, and websites. Another tactic is sabotage or reputational harm. This can include doxing, circulating sensitive or private content, or circulating content without consent for the purpose of humiliation, embarrassment, or shaming, spamming, and also undermining credibility. Doxing refers to a tactic that is used to collect and expose personal information about someone online. The information that is collected and distributed without consent can include their real name, address, phone number, where they work, financial information, and other sensitive or private content. The purpose of doxing is usually to harass, shame, exploit, or harm the victim, including causing reputational harm. Spamming is sending or posting bulk messages, and this can include profanity, insults, hate speech, malicious links, fraudulent reviews, invites from fake friends, etc. In a way, this also would sabotage or cause reputational harm. Another tactic of cyber violence is property damage. So this includes destruction of devices or tampering with devices to cause isolation. So not allowing the survivor then to be in touch with a support team, some support system, or contact help or support in any other way. The last category is surveillance. This can include stalking, GPS tracking or cameras, call logs, and social media posts. tracking devices or demanding location to be used is a form of surveillance. When you think about cameras, you can think about smart devices. So Ring, doorbells, or other features that allow video, such as um, Alexa, for instance, where you can tap into the camera feature in somebody's home. Also surveilling call logs and surveilling social media posts or search history or social media history, and also spamming consistent and repetitive texts demanding to know where the person is, why they're not answering, and other forms of surveillance. So now we're going to put what we learned into practice. To better understand DV and the digital components of domestic violence, we're going to do a silent activity. For this activity, we will pretend to be a victim survivor, making decisions to navigate an abusive relationship. This role play is called In Her Digital Footprints. The videos are from an online training through NNEDV and NCJ FCJ. Here are the instructions to completing this role play. As you watch the video, you'll be asked to make decisions as if you are the victim survivor, Soraya. Based on the decision that you choose mentally, you will listen to the outcome of that decision and continue Soraya's storyline. There will be some decision point prompts asking, what do you do? This is an internal and quiet time to consider an immediate response as if you are the victim survivor. There's no multiple choice options. There will be limited time to think about what you would do and make a decision. Just as a victim survivor often has to make immediate decisions in a short amount of time. After this scenario, we will review different elements of digital abuse and how they were experienced through In Her Digital Footprint role play.
So, for background, your name is Soraya. You are 27 years old. You live in Houston, Texas. You work as a business analyst for a small marketing firm, and you are applying for law school. For the past 9 years, you have been in relationship with your college boyfriend, Solomon. You and Solomon have been living together with your 2-year-old son, Alex. With a small child at home, the two of you make enough to get by, but you are living month to month. Solomon works as a software programmer for a small startup. He makes less money than you do. He works long hours. Solomon was excited when you became pregnant, but as your pregnancy progressed, your relationship started to change. You and Solomon began to argue more and more. After Alex was born, your relationship became increasingly worse. He fluctuated between being impossible to reach when you needed him and constantly checking up on you. When you didn't answer his calls right away, he called your family frantically, searching for you. On one occasion, when you were home taking care of the baby, you didn't answer his call while you were in the shower. He called your neighbor repeatedly and demanded that she go over and check on you and the baby. Several days ago, you and Solomon got into an intense argument. You tried to leave the house, and Solomon stood in front of the door, refusing to let you leave. Solomon said, "You will never take my child away from me. After all I've been through, I will fight into the end to make sure I have my family. Nothing will stop me, not even you." There was something about the way he said these words that scared you. Later in the evening, the situation calmed down and you were able to leave. So one more time, just a reminder for the exercise, you can use the worksheet that was provided in the chat to reflect on your experience making decisions as Soraya. You'll want to do this reflection in silence and answer as if you are Soraya.
For everybody. Later that evening, after the argument with Solomon, the situation calms down. You take the opportunity and leave the house with your son Alex. You go to your best friend's house to stay while you figure out what to do next. Solomon constantly calls and sends you text messages. At first, you answered to ask him to give you space, but the calls and text messages are non-stop and are impacting your work. The messages are starting to include veiled threats. After repeatedly telling him to stop contacting you, you get frustrated and send Solomon a strongly worded text message.
Decision point. Do you A, block his messages to try and stop him from messaging you? Or B, choose not to block the messages in hopes that he will stop?
For those who chose to block Solomon's messages. Because you block Solomon's number, he receives a message that you are no longer accepting his calls. Solomon starts to incessantly call your family and friends. Your family is extremely worried and you are concerned that the stress is bad for your parents' health. You start to wonder whether you should unblock him so that others don't have to deal with this situation. You also worry that now that you have blocked him, you are not sure what he is planning. You don't want to hear from him, but you worry that having no contact also puts you at risk. After a week of calls and texts, your mother speaks with you and says this has to stop. She tells you that you need to go to the police or else she is going to. For those who chose not to block Solomon's number. Solomon's messages don't stop and seem to be escalating. You tell your best friend what is happening, and she says that she loves you, but she is scared for her safety and yours. She tells you that you need to either call the police or find somewhere else to stay.
Decision point. Do you A, contact the police? Or B, choose not to contact the police, hoping that if you ignore it, Solomon will settle down?
For those who chose not to call the police. You unblock Solomon's number so that your parents do not receive any more calls. You almost immediately start receiving calls and text messages. You speak with your best friend and beg her not to kick you out. You tell her that you are doing your best to work through the situation, but you need a little more time. She tells you that she doesn't want to kick you out, but she feels helpless. She agrees that you can stay for now, but if you are not going to call the police, she says you have to go to court to get an order of protection. For those who chose to call the police, you go to the police station and show them your call logs and messages. The police quickly look through the evidence. They say they're sorry, but they don't think there is enough evidence of a crime and there is nothing they can do. They suggest that you try getting a protection order in family court. For everybody, the police say they were unable to help you, and you cannot afford to move out of your friend's house. So you decide you have no other option but to stop responding to Solomon and to file for an order of protection in family court. You do not know what you are doing, but you are granted a temporary order of protection. You don't file for custody for Alex because you aren't sure about leaving the relationship yet. For everybody, you give the sheriff the court papers to serve Solomon, but he seems to be avoiding service. Before he is served with the order, he sends you threatening text messages and direct messages through Facebook Messenger. For everybody. After a few failed attempts at service by the sheriff, Solomon was finally served with the temporary order of protection. You have a hearing date for a permanent order. A few days before the hearing date, you get a call from a 1-800 number that you don't recognize, and when you answer, it is a recorded voice saying they are with the court. You know that the court's number usually starts with the local area code and are confused why it came in like this.
Your court date has been rescheduled. Your new court date is on Thursday at 2 p.m.
When you arrive on Thursday at 2 p.m. at the courthouse for the hearing, you learn that you missed the hearing. The court tells you that the court did not make that call and that the date was never changed. Your case was dismissed and your temporary order of protection has expired.
Decision point. What do you do?
For everybody, a clerk in the petition room tells you that you can either file a new petition or that it may be possible to file a motion to reopen the case, which will allow you to tell the court about the violation of the temporary order of protection. However, filing the motion to reopen the case is very complicated, and you would likely need to get an attorney. They tell you that filing a new petition would be much faster and would give you immediate protection. You don't have money for an attorney, and you know that you won't be eligible for legal aid. For those who decided to try and reopen the case, it takes you several hours to find the correct form, to fill it out, and to get it notarized. You then wait in the line to speak with the clerk. When you get to the front of the line, the clerk tells you that there isn't time for the judge to hear this type of case before the court closes. They tell you that if you want to see a judge today, you can file a new petition. If not, you will have to come back tomorrow to see the judge. You will then have to get the documents served on Solomon, and then they would schedule a time for both you and him to come back to court on another day. You have missed a lot of work and have no more vacation. The clerk tells you that a magistrate can see you today if you file a new petition. You decide that you have no option but to file a new case. For everybody. Because you filed a new petition, you lost the opportunity to have the court enforce the temporary order of protection against Solomon for the fake call from the court. However, you are granted a new temporary protection order, and it specifically says that Solomon cannot call or text you. For everybody. The next week, you get a flood of emails and text messages from people you don't know. Many of the messages are extremely sexual. You ask how they got your information, and one of them tells you they got it from your dating profile. You did not make this dating profile. You think that Solomon posted it because it includes things that not many people know about you. You stay up most of the night searching for more information and send a message to the company asking for the profile to be taken down. You continue to get emails and messages, including very sexual images.
Decision point. What do you do?
For everybody. Solomon has made several threats to take your son, and you are worried. Your son has been with you since you left, and you decide to file a custody petition. Both the order of protection and custody issues are heard by the same judge. During the pre-trial conference, you show the court a printout of the fake dating profile. Solomon sees the printout, tells the court that he didn't create the online dating profile. He then says that the offensive content of that profile shows that you're more interested in your dating life than taking care of Alex. He asks for visitation while the final custody and visitation issues are being decided.
Decision point. Do you A, contest his request for visitation because of what he has been doing? Or B, agree to visitation although you're concerned about his actions?
For everybody. The judge receives evidence from both parties that CPS has been called several times to the home in the past 2 years. The judge decides that because of the repeated calls, they will not order any visitation until Child Protective Services can evaluate both homes. You schedule the home evaluation with CPS and arrange to take an afternoon off work. CPS doesn't show up at the scheduled time. You go to call CPS, but you cannot make phone calls. You call the phone company from your office and learn that Solomon closed your family phone account and that you missed the call from CPS to reschedule the home evaluation. You tell the phone company that you have been receiving messages on WhatsApp and through your messaging program. They tell you that even when you have no service, you can send certain messages, but only when you have Wi-Fi access. You reach out to CPS to try to explain what happened, but there isn't time to reschedule the CPS visit before the next court date.
Decision point. What do you do?
For everybody. At the next court date for your custody and visitation case, you tell the court that the phone line was shut off, and Solomon says he closed the account because it was the end of the contract. He says he tried to ask you about it by phone and text before you filed the order of protection case, but you weren't answering his calls and he had to make a decision. He says that you then got an order of protection and he couldn't speak with you about it anymore. Also, during the hearing, Solomon tries to show what he says are harassing messages from you that were sent before the case was started. The message has been changed. It looks like he deleted everything that he said and he only shows what you said. You remember that you still have the message on your phone. You scroll through. You see that the entire thread would show that he is misleading the court, but showing the phone would mean that you have to show the court an explicit image of yourself.
Decision point. Do you A, show the whole thread to the court in the hearing, including the embarrassing photos? Or B, wait to try and seek advice because you're worried that the photos will make you look bad to the judge?
For those who decide to show the whole thread, the judge sees the images and makes a face that you have a hard time deciphering. The judge tells Solomon that he should not send these photos to anybody else, then looks at you and says that you should be really careful before sending photos like these. The judge says he is concerned that Solomon may be presenting incomplete evidence, but will need to see evidence from both sides at trial. The judge decides not to order visitation until after the trial. For those who did not show the message, you do not share the information about the fake dating profile because the judge only heard the testimony from CPS after seeing Solomon's house and did not get a chance to hear CPS's conversation with you. The court orders visitation for Solomon with Alex. The court does not grant shared custody at this time. For everybody. Shortly after the last court appearance, anonymous calls begin coming into CPS about you and Alex. You guess that someone from Solomon's family is calling because his parents have also been calling your parents trying to get information about childcare and your financial and housing situations. CPS has already shown up at your house 3 times.
Soraya, hi. This is Ms. Davis from Child Protective Services. We'd recently spoken about your custody case. We've received another call about a dangerous situation. We need to schedule another time to come out to check on Alex.
Decision point. Do you A, file a violation petition because of the calls to CPS? Or B, choose not to file a violation petition because of the calls to CPS?
For everybody. You recently found a new daycare for Alex near to where you are living. Several days after the last court-ordered visit, you receive an email from the daycare. A week later, you receive a call stating that Solomon stopped by the urgent care clinic you'd taken Alex to for an ear infection and asked when the follow-up appointment was scheduled for. You haven't told Solomon where the daycare or the urgent care are located. Later that week, you find a thin, small plastic thing in Alex's diaper bag.
Decision point. What do you do?
For everybody. This week, you have a big presentation to key partners at your firm. Right before you go into the presentation, you receive an instant message from a coworker. You have no idea what they are referring to, but you don't have time to ask them. You run to your presentation to get set up. The presentation is going well, but then you flip to the last page. You do not know what happened. You wrote "thank you" on the last slide and double-checked the slide last night. You used to work from home regularly, and you think that Solomon has hacked into your work account.
Decision point? What do you do?
Well, hopefully in her digital footprints gave you some insight as to the experience of digital abuse for some of the survivors that we serve that you may be working with. Let's debrief that role play. What were some power and control tactics that were used over Soraya? We definitely saw all four categories of digital abuse tactics. So we saw surveillance, impersonation, sabotage, and destruction of property. For surveillance, there were tracking devices that were used, as well as constant texts and calls. For impersonation, there was the creation of a fake account on a dating app. Sabotage, there was doxing and using Soraya's personal information on that dating app, as well as sabotaging and undermining her credibility at work, sabotaging her with CPS, and sabotaging her character with both at CPS and at work. We also saw the destruction and the tampering of some texts to be used to sabotage her, as well as creating isolation with canceling of the phone plan. When we think about digital abuse, especially with the examples of in her digital footprints, we can also see how digital abuse increases the reach of abuse. Family was getting involved. They were getting harassed over the phone, even when Soraya blocked the number. Her friend was getting harassed. Private information was being shared. In fact, even at her work, she was facing sabotage and abuse. What were some barriers that Soraya faced in getting support? Some notable barriers were financial barriers. She didn't have the finances to get her own housing, and so had to choose whether she was going to go to court or go to law enforcement if she wanted to remain at her friend's house. Also navigating those systems, navigating CPS, navigating court, navigating what it would be like to get a protection from abuse order was a barrier that she faced, as well as law enforcement. Although she did end up going to law enforcement because of the nature of the abuse, there wasn't enough evidence for law enforcement to actually provide support for her. How did Soraya's experience with digital abuse overlap with other forms of abuse? In her digital footprints also showed how digital abuse amplifies other types of abuse. We saw psychological abuse through guilt and manipulation. We saw verbal abuse through threats and belittling. We saw sexual abuse through the creation of the dating app and profile. We saw financial abuse through the undermining of her credibility at work that could have caused unemployment. Well, hopefully in her digital footprint helped you understand digital abuse and how it shows up in adult relationships. So now we're going to transition into talking about adolescent digital abuse and how digital abuse might show up differently or the same in adolescent and teen relationships. As you can see on the slide, one report from 2013 shows that both girls and boys do experience digital abuse. However, girls do experience digital abuse at a higher percentage than boys, especially if that abuse is sexual in nature. As a note, the study did not collect data on gender fluid or gender nonconforming adolescents. Let's gain an overview of teen digital abuse by looking at some key findings from the Urban Institute's Justice Policy Center 2013 study. Here are the key findings. Tampering with the partner's social media account is the most prevalent form of digital abuse. More than 1 in 12 teens in a relationship say their partner used their social networking account without their permission. Another key finding. Acts of sexual digital abuse are the second and third most reported complaints. Approximately 7% of teenagers say their partners sent them texts and or emails asking them to engage in unwanted sexual acts. The same percentage says their partner pressured them to send a sexually explicit photo of themselves. Approximately 15% of girls report sexual digital abuse compared with 7% of boys. Digital harassment is a red flag for other abuse. Remember, we discussed how digital abuse amplifies other forms of abuse. Digital abuse in a relationship rarely happens in isolation. In fact, 84% of the teens who report digital abuse say they were also psychologically abused by their partners, and 52% say they were also physically abused. 33% say they were sexually coerced. Only 4% of teens in a relationship say the abuse and harassment they experienced was strictly digital. The last key finding from the 2013 study revealed that victims of relationship digital abuse include girls and boys, middle school and high school students, and teens of all sexual orientations. All have one thing in common, which is that they rarely seek help from teachers or authority figures. Although this study is about 10 years old, it does lend some insight into how digital abuse is interacted with or how teens experience digital abuse. And we can only surmise that with the increase of different social media apps like TikTok and Snapchat, the availability for different types of digital abuse also increases. Continuing with our overview of adolescent digital abuse, let's consider what digital abuse is and what it isn't in context with adolescents. So remember that there are 3 different types of relational violence that we should pay attention to, right? One is intimate partner violence, so that has to deal with romantic relationships. The second is relational violence in non-romantic contexts, and the third is criminal behavior. So remember, abuse has to be considered ARA or adolescent relationship abuse. It has to be either in a relationship, a romantic context, or it has to be non-romantic domestic violence. So here are some examples. An adult predator grooming a teen on a dating app, game chat, or chat room. Would that be considered adolescent digital abuse? Obviously, the answer is no. That could be considered criminal behavior, but not digital abuse because the adult is not in a romantic relationship with this individual. Instead, it would just be considered a criminal act. A romantic partner sending or demanding sexualized pictures via text or DM. Yes, this would be considered adolescent digital abuse. Why? Because they're in a relationship, a romantic relationship, and they're demanding sexual pictures through digital means, right? Through technology. Next, seeing embarrassing posts and being spammed and harassed on social media after breaking up. Yes, this is considered adolescent digital abuse. Even though they're no longer in a romantic relationship, intimate partner violence includes current and previous partners. So the embarrassing posts, being spammed, harassed, these are layers of tactics that are being used through digital abuse. Lastly, you find out that people have been sharing and making fun of pictures of you that you posted on Snapchat. No, this would not be considered adolescent digital abuse. Although it could be considered cyberbullying or bullying, these individuals are not in a romantic relationship, nor is this relationship considered non-romantic domestic violence. Okay, so when talking about adolescent digital abuse, we also have to consider whether the behaviors are just unhealthy behaviors or whether they are abusive behaviors. When we're talking about digital abuse, here are some emojis that are often used for X-rated purposes. But remember, not all sexualized content is unwanted. These are teens, so a lot of what they will be communicating might be unhealthy. It might be sexualized in nature, but it might necessarily not be unwanted, right? And similarly, not all unwanted content is abusive. So somebody might send something that is not wanted, but we would not necessarily categorize it as abuse. But it is important, especially as an adult, to understand some of the hidden meaning behind these emojis, especially if they're being hidden or sent via chat rooms or Snapchats or DMs or text messages, to understand the hidden meaning behind the messages that are being sent, because they might be threatening or abusive in nature. So I know that this is pretty explicit, but we're all adults and this is for educational purposes. So as you can see here, the eggplant is used in reference to a penis, a cat is used in reference to a vagina, a pussycat, the wow emoji face is used to describe oral sex of a male, whereas a tongue out is used to represent oral sex of a female. The peach is used to represent the butt or the vagina. The cherries are used to represent female breasts or virginity. The hands above our head emoji is used for an orgasm. The kind of toxic emoji is used for, X-rated or again an orgasm. The sprinkler or the sweat is emoji is used for ejaculation. A camel is used to represent the actual act of sex. The grape is used to represent male testicles. The fist emoji is used to represent hand stimulation of a male. A finger pointer emoji is used to represent hand stimulation of a female. You can see both of the next two emojis together are used to communicate sexual intercourse. The camera is used to represent send me nude pictures or, flash me. The tent is used to represent a male erection. As you can see, this symbol is used to refer to the sexual position 69. A waving hand and a peach together communicate spanking. A fork and knife and a taco together are used to represent wanting oral sex on a female. The taco in and of itself in general is used to represent oral sex on a female, and then a rocket or a volcano is used to represent an orgasm as well. So it is important to know this kind of language that might be communicated by adolescents digitally to help keep adolescents safe, to help with safety planning, and to help empower adolescents to create healthy boundaries around some of the content that is being shared or that they may see as they engage in social media and on public digital platforms. So as we think about what is unhealthy and what is abusive behavior in adolescents via digital abuse, we are going to look at a few short clips from One Love Foundation so we can get a better understanding of what would be considered unhealthy, what would be considered abusive, and how adolescent digital abuse might show up in teen relationships.
Hello. Hey. Hey.
Oh my god, what?
You always ignore me.
I'm sorry, I was just studying.
So I'm not important to you anymore.
Please don't do this again.
This is why I can't trust you. You are making me do this.
Even when they happen on your phone, unhealthy behaviors can still hurt. Learn the signs before things go too far.
So as you could see there, that is unhealthy. However, if it becomes a pattern, those behaviors would be considered abusive. So what you saw there was possessiveness. You saw minimizing, denial, or blaming. You also saw an inability to have one's own independence. Okay, here's the next video.
Can we just talk?
Come on, take it off.
I don't know if I want to.
Please, just one pic. I swear, I won't send it to anyone. I thought you were into this, but not.
Okay, don't go. I'll do it.
Even when they happen on your phone, unhealthy behaviors can still hurt. Learn the signs before things go too far.
So what you saw there was sexual coercion and also guilting. And here is the last video.
I don't like when you get like this.
Then just unlike her post.
I'm not flirting with her, she's my friend.
It's her or me. Block her.
But it's not fair, you can't.
Do you understand? I don't block her.
Even when they happen on your phone, unhealthy behaviors can still hurt. Learn the signs before things go too far.
And on that one, again, we saw possessiveness and the use of ultimatums. So as a reminder, it's important that we still interrupt unhealthy behaviors so that they do not become abusive or survivors don't get trapped in a cycle of abuse, right? We help to minimize that risk when we continually interrupt unhealthy behaviors. So what we saw in those previous videos were unhealthy behaviors. As a reminder, for those behaviors to be considered abuse, they would have to be a pattern of behavior used to control another individual by reducing that power, the personal power and relational power. And again, as a review, this is the power and control wheel, which are tactics that are used by abusers to gain that power and control in the relationship. So now we will watch another short film from One Love called Behind the Post. And this does show a abusive relationship, and it does a great job of showing the progression from unhealthy behaviors into abuse in an adolescent relationship, and also does a great job of showing the role that digital abuse plays in amplifying and abuse and just digital abuse in general in adolescent relationships.
Don't go. Just.
You can't.
Yes, I can. You don't need to go.
I want to, but I can't.
Yes, you can.
No,
Just
Zoe,
say. Come on.
Come on, we got practice.
Can you just skip it?
We can't keep doing this, all right? It's like a butterfly kiss or a ladybug kiss.
Close your eyes.
All right. Ah!
You scared me.
Hey, I couldn't wait to see you. I didn't mean to. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to scare you. I was just thinking about you. I was just trying to be sweet.
There's a picture that kind of looked like her.
Totally.
It looked like the girl from that movie.
Seen it.
Could be the eyes.
It could be.
The smile.
Jeez, Will, stop!
Huh? What? We're all having a good time here, right? Hey. I'm sorry. Look, I got drunk and I was stupid.
What?
I don't know. Your phone's ringing.
No, it's fine.
All right. It's still ringing. You don't want to get it? What if it's an emergency or something?
No, it's probably just a friend.
It's just a friend? All right, then pick it up and show me. If you're not hiding something, then let me see the phone.
Stop. Calm down.
Yeah, I'm gonna see it.
Stop. Will.
I just want to look at your phone. Just let me look at your
Come
phone.
on. Hey, come on.
Show me. Hurry.
Stop! Stop.
Zoe, excuse me, Zoe. No, come on, walk away from me. Like you don't even care that somebody's calling you. You don't pick up the phone.
I'm not.
Stop crying and making it sound like I'm the bad guy. Why are you a liar?
I'm not a liar.
You are a liar.
I am not a liar.
You're lying right now. You're lying right.
No.
So as you saw from behind the post, digital abuse played a much different role in this example of ARA, or adolescent relationship abuse. So what were some power and control tactics that were used by Will to control Zoe's behavior in this example? The only digital abuse tactic we saw was surveillance. So there was spamming with excessive texts, trying to check in. Where are you? What are you doing? Why aren't you contacting me? And then clearly location was being used, because if you remember, Will did show up on the sidewalk at night when she was walking and not responding to his text out of the blue. So clearly he was using her location, whether it was through an app like Snapchat, the Snap Map, or by sharing location to know where she was and to show up, because she wasn't responding when he thought that she should respond to him. We also saw surveillance tactics with surveilling who was calling her, how she was using her phone, that possessiveness over Will needing to know who she was talking to. However, we did see other unhealthy behaviors that did end up being layered tactics of power and control. We saw volatility, so Will would go from 0 to 100. He was very verbally and physically aggressive. He did not engage in healthy conflict resolution tactics. He also used minimizing excuses and blaming to deflect responsibility for his unhealthy and abusive actions. And he also engaged in isolation tactics. So again, surveilling who's calling on her phone and also trying to pull her away from her friend group when she was at the bonfire. We did see Zoe engage in an unhealthy behavior at the beginning when Will was upset. He did not want to stay. He needed to go to practice. He told Zoe, we can't keep doing this, right? So that was an unhealthy behavior that could have sabotaged his standing on his sports team. However, again, this would not be considered abuse because it didn't end up being a cycle, a pattern, I should say, of behavior where Zoe was trying to use coercive control over Will. So what were some barriers that we saw for Zoe in getting support, and what role did social media play in Zoe's experience of abuse? So these definitely are connected. When we look at the role of social media, when we look at digital abuse in this example, we see that digital abuse, social media became a barrier for Zoe in getting support. She relied on the perception that she was portraying over social media, that her relationship was great, that everything was fine, that he is the best boyfriend, that she's so happy in their relationship. She relied on the social standing of what she was projecting out via social media. And that actually ended up being a barrier for her in getting support. At the very end of the film, we saw her looking through all of her posts on social media, where she only posted the good times, right? She only posted those times when things were stable in the relationship, or when Will was trying to stabilize the relationship after an explosive incident. And this was her way of stabilizing after an explosive incident. So she only looked at the good times. And so it became a barrier of her of interrupting the unhealthy behavior, of her reaching out to get support, and instead ended up contributing to her continuing in this cycle of abuse. So now that we reviewed what digital abuse is and how it shows up in adult and adolescent relationships, let's discuss our role as an advocate and strategies for safety planning. As an advocate, you will always follow the JARS model of advocacy. This is an acronym that stands for justice, autonomy, restoration, and safety. So as an advocate, we keep JARS in mind as we think about how we're going to interact with a survivor and a survivor experiencing any type of abuse, but also, especially in this case, digital abuse. JARS stands for justice. So what do they need to feel like justice will be accomplished? So we think and consider about what is lawful, but also what is right. Autonomy. We try to make sure that we remember and restore the survivor's autonomy. Remember when we were talking about abuse, their power and control was taken from them. So we want to make sure that we are not taking away any of their autonomy. We are restoring their autonomy. We are being respectful and honoring their agency. So whatever we plan with them, we make sure that they are comfortable with, that they feel safe doing, and that they are the authors of their safety plan. The R in JARS is for restoration. So we want to keep in mind that digital abuse is far-reaching and it amplifies other types of abuse. So when we think about restoration, we have to consider all of the different ways that digital abuse affected this individual, and we want to help restore their lives. So that could be financial restoration, that could be relational restoration, that could be digital restoration, environmental restoration, and we are working to consider those different components. Lastly, I shouldn't say lastly, but in the acronym, last is safety. In no particular order, we always, of course, want to focus on the safety of our survivor friend. So safety can mean physical safety, but also emotional safety, financial safety, and digital safety. So it's really important to keep JARS in mind as we consider how we are going to implement strategies for their safety. Two key considerations when engaging in advocacy is the first, understand how the survivor is experiencing abuse to help mitigate the abuse. So as we saw in a variety of different films, digital abuse can occur and be experienced in a plethora of different ways. So understanding how the digital abuse is being experienced will help mitigate the abuse and help guide our safety planning. The second consideration is considering how safety planning could add greater risk of escalation or retaliation. This we saw an example of this in her digital footprint, where we had to decide whether we were going to block the abuser or not block the abuser, depending on whether there was a greater risk of escalation, of retaliation, or whether we felt like that was the safest decision in that moment. So really making sure that, yes, we might have a bunch of different safety planning ideas to go through with the survivor, but allowing the survivor to decide whether those safety planning measures will actually be comfortable and be safe for them. So that being said, here are 4 strategies to consider when we discuss safety planning around technology. Number 1 is to consider internet connected devices. So this is really important for cohabitating individuals, for married individuals, for individuals who have shared accounts. So internet connected devices can be smart speakers, cameras, locks. So this can include like Google Home, Alexa, those type of devices where they can remotely your speaker. So I know that, in my house, if I'm on vacation or if I'm out, I can broadcast a message into my house so that those that are still in my house can hear it. So making sure that those are disconnected, or there are safety strategies around that so that the abuser cannot continue to extend their reach into the survivor's house through smart devices. This also includes, we talked about video capabilities as well as Ring on doorbells to know and surveil when the survivor is coming in and out or who is visiting their house, and lock, so they could essentially lock them in and out of their house or their vehicle. Other strategies to consider are account passwords, privacy settings, usernames. So if they might need to change or adjust any of those because the abuser might have access to or know their passwords or their usernames, and they might need to adjust privacy settings on many of their different social media or digital accounts. Also consider search engines, autofill, shared accounts, drives, family plans. So again, the abuser might have access to search engines, search history, autofill forms with passwords and financial information. Shared accounts like Google Drive, you might have pictures that they have access to that you might not want them to have access to, and other shared accounts like financial accounts, social media accounts, Adobe accounts, or other digital accounts, as well as family plans. Again, we saw this in the example of In Her Digital Footprint, where they shared a family plan. And so when the abuser canceled the phone plan, Soraya did not have access to receiving or making phone calls. The last thing to consider is if it is safe and if the survivor feels comfortable deleting, blocking, muting, or removing followers. So we know that abuse isn't, that there's a social context around abuse. And sometimes that means that we are connected to survivors, I should say, are connected to their abuser's friends or family. The abusers can be connected to the survivor's friends and family. So thinking about if we want to delete accounts, block people, mute accounts, remove followers, what feels the most safe and comfortable for the survivor. Lastly, as we think about advocacy, there are two main resources that are extremely helpful in thinking through and providing empowerment for survivors to think through all of the different safety considerations. You will be able to access these resources via the next course in this, I should say the next lesson in this course on Teachable. So the first is CETA from Cornell University. This provides a whole range of different resources. So you get an Android safety guide, a Gmail and Google safety, an iCloud general safety, understanding your iCloud data, disconnecting from your ex-partner checklist. It's about smart home devices. It's about checking your smartphone or tablet for spyware, Google Chrome privacy checkup, Facebook turning on extra security and cleaning up privacy and security, Instagram, WhatsApp, TikTok, Hotmail, Yahoo, password manager. So it's a list and resources that really help navigate all of these considerations with survivors. That second link, Stop Non-Consensual Intimate Image Abuse, is a link where you can actually stop the circulation of non-consensual intimate images. So a lot of times, law enforcement, although it is illegal, they can't necessarily, they don't have the capability to stop the circulation of images once they get out there. So this link helps in that. It helps survivors to stop, to delete any instances where these pictures might be popping up and where they might occur on the World Wide Web or in digital space. Thank you so much for attending this training on digital abuse for adults and adolescents. I hope that you were able to expand your awareness and understanding of what digital abuse is, how it manifests in different relationships, and what you can do as an advocate to build safety and empower survivors, as well as helping to end digital abuse in our county and community.